Good morning, elephants. Good afternoon, dinos. It's story time. Happy Wacky Wednesday. Do you remember what we're talking about this week? We are talking about ocean and the ocean animals. Animals that live in a habitat called the ocean, right? So today we talked about an ocean is made of what kind of water? It's salt water. Did you do the experiment and wasn't it fun? Okay, so today we're talking about a certain kind of animal that lives in the ocean, and there are so many of them, and they're the one that you're probably most familiar with, fish. Okay, let's learn a little bit about fish from this story called Fish is Fish. It's by Leo Lionni. Leo Lionni is the author and the illustrator. Now, what I want you to figure out is this story fiction or nonfiction, right? A fiction story is a made-up story, and some of the reasons how we know that a story is made up is the characters in the story, if they're animals, they act like people, right? They talk, they walk, they wear clothes, so right away we know that's a made-up story. Many times a made-up story is illustrated instead of having real photographs. Let's find this out. I told you that doesn't always mean it. Sometimes there are nonfiction informational texts which are real information that has drawings in it. But let's see if this is a beautifully illustrated book. It looks like they used watercolors. This story is called Fish is Fish. What do you think it's going to be about? Okay. At the edge of the woods, there was a pond. And there a minnow and a tadpole swam among the weeds. They were inseparable friends. We know that a tadpole is what? A baby frog. One morning, the tadpole discovered that during the night, he had grown 2 little legs. "Look," he triumphantly said. "Look, I'm a frog." "Nonsense," said the minnow. "How could you be a frog if only last night you were a little fish, just like me?" They argued and argued until finally the tadpole said, "Frogs are frogs and fish is fish, and that is that." In the weeks that followed, the tadpole grew tiny front legs and his tail got smaller and smaller. And then one fine day, a real frog now, he climbed out of the water and on to the grassy bank. The minnow, too, had grown and become a full-fledged fish. He often wondered where his 4-footed friend had gone, but days and weeks went by, and the frog did not return. Then one day, with a happy splash that shook the woods, the frog jumped into the pond. "Where have you been?" asked the fish excitedly. "I've been about the world, hopping here and hopping there," said the frog. "I have seen extraordinary things." "Like what?" asked the fish. "Birds," said the frog mysteriously. "Birds." And he told the fish about the birds who had wings and 2 legs and many, many colors. And the frog, as he talked, his friends saw the birds fly through his mind like large feathered fish. "What else?" asked the fish impatiently. "What animal is that?" "It looks like a cowfish, right?" "Cows," said the frog. "Cows. They have 4 legs, horns, eat grass, and carry pink bags of milk." But look how the fish is imagining him to look. Because really all the fish knows is what fish look like, right? "And people," said the frog. "Men, women, children." And he talked and talked until it was dark in the pond. But the picture in the fish's mind was full of lights and colors and marvelous things, and he couldn't sleep. Ah, if he could only jump about like his friend and see that wonderful world. Of all these things he's imagining. But every one of them looks like a what? Right? Everyone looks like a fish to him because that's all he knows. And so the days went by. The frog had gone, and the fish just lay there, dreaming about birds in flight, grazing cows, and those strange animals all dressed up that his friend called people. One day he finally decided that come what may, he too must see them. And so with a mighty whack of the tail, he jumped clear out of the water and on to the bank. Well, let's make a prediction here. What do you think is going to happen to the fish now? Uh-oh. He landed in the dry, warm grass, and there he lay, gasping for air, unable to breathe, unable to move. Help, help, he groaned feebly. Luckily, the frog, who'd been hunting butterflies nearby, saw him and with all his strength pushed him back into the pond. Still stunned, the fish floated about for an instant. Then he breathed deeply, letting the clean, cool water run through his gills. Now he felt weightless again, and with an ever so slight motion of the tail, he could move to and fro, up and down, as before. The sun rays reached down within the weeds and gently shifted patches of luminous color. This world was surely the most beautiful of all worlds. He smiled at his friend the frog, who sat watching him from a lily leaf. You were right, he said. Fish is fish. Well, first of all, tell me, is this book fiction or nonfiction? Why do you think it's fiction? Well, the frog and the fish were talking to each other, right? So we know it's a made-up story. But even though it's a made-up story, it teaches us a lesson, right? So one of the lessons that we learn is, what do you think one of the lessons is that we learned from the fish? He wanted to go out and see the world and be like a frog instead of being a fish. And he didn't understand until he left his world and went to the land and realized that's really not his place. And when he got back in the water, he could breathe again, because what do you know about fish? Can they breathe air through lungs like other animals and people can? No, they have what? What do you call those? They have slits on the side of their neck, and they suck in the water, and they take the oxygen from the water to breathe. They have gills. They breathe differently. They can't live on land. And even though that's different, that's okay. So one of the lessons we could take away from this is that everybody's different, and everybody has different situations and experiences, but yours is great, because he realized that under the water is the most beautiful place. Now, this didn't take place in the ocean. It took place in a pond, because fish live in all bodies of water. There's fresh water, and then there's salt water, right? What is the ocean made out of? Salt water. Exactly. That's why things can float so easily in the water, because remember, salt water is dense, it's heavier. I hope you did the experiment, because that was lots of fun. All right, so I hope you enjoyed Fish is Fish, and I'll see you later on Zoom. Bye.